Crying. Okay, really controversial topic, sensitive topic. We might get a lot of comments here, and that's okay because it is something that is so polarizing in the parent community. We've got social media on both ends of the spectrum saying you need to sleep train, or you're a monster if you do because there's crying. And what I want to do is empower you to feel really good about the choices that you are making for your own individual child, and just turn off the rest of the noise. Hi, my name is Sarah, and as the lead certified pediatric sleep expert at Yours on Baby Sleep, this is one of my biggest goals of my practice, is to help support and guide parents through the sleep training process and help them to understand what is healthy about crying and when it is time to modify things so that we see less crying over time, in order to achieve their individual sleep goals and get a good night's rest. And I love that you've joined me here today to learn about crying and what to do to make it easier during the sleep training process. The funniest thing that I found out about when I received my sleep training certification was that there's a book called The No Cry Sleep Solution. And if you open up the cover, on the first page, it literally says as a disclaimer, your child actually might cry. So there's really no way to guarantee there will be zero crying. Even the gentlest or more gradual forms of sleep training will result in your child protesting for a period of time because you are changing the way that you are offering them sleep. They are learning something new and they're tired. This is the perfect storm for them to protest, to tell us that they're not happy. This is also really developmentally normal. It's really typical for our kids to test our boundaries, to push back and tell us when they are not happy with the way we are teaching them. I want you to picture a day with your child, and these situations are applicable to a wide range of ages. So your baby cries for many reasons. They have a poopy diaper. They are bored. They don't want to be on their belly. They want to be on their back. They want to be held. They want to be put down. Your toddler cries because they want a snack. They want to eat gummy bears for lunch. They don't want to eat the fruit that you're giving them. They want to run around the house with some scissors. Your preschooler is going to cry because they're annoyed that you won't let them watch unlimited screen time, right? So I could keep going, and we don't need that. You can insert a lot of scenarios here and understand that your children cry frequently throughout the day. Keeping these scenarios in mind, what is your response most of the time? Most of the time you are tending to them. You are providing them some type of response. Now, I'm going to really break it down for you and try to remove as much emotion as possible. The response is either going to be yes or it's going to be no. And as a result, your child is either going to be happy or they're going to continue to be upset. If you are prioritizing as a parent their health and their safety and your boundaries from a behavioral perspective, yeah, they might cry when you say no or when they're not allowed to have the preferred insert here. However, it's okay. You're okay with it because that is something that is important to you. It is important to you that they're not running around the house with scissors. It is important to you that they're not on the screen for the third hour for the day. Or it's important to you that they are getting their tummy time in because that's really good for their head development and their trunk and their neck control. Now, I want to be realistic with you and empathetic too because I am a mom. I have 2 kids. They both cry often, and I did sleep train them both in different ways. So it's easier or less challenging, or you have more patience to deal with crying and refusal behavior on the part of your children during the daytime. Why? Because it's daytime. You're not staring down the hole of an endless night of being awake. You have activities and other things to distract your child from crying or throwing a tantrum. And those scenarios that I outlined are very clear, right? Like the scenario with the scissors, it's like a no-brainer. I don't know a parent who would say it's okay for my kid to run around with a pair of scissors and I'm gonna give them back just to get them to stop crying. But when we get to bedtime, this is where the lines get really blurred. The waters get murky. It's a really gray area because it's perceived that when your child is crying, we need to respond in some way. And for so much of our time as parents, we're responding with physical support. We're offering something to comfort them or to soothe them. And that's okay. If you've made it to this point in the video, you're probably at a point where it is not sustainable the way that you have been soothing your child. It is not okay after the age of 4 months old for your kid to be waking up multiple times a night unless it's for a required night feeding. It's not okay for your child to be taking hours to be put down to bed or to only be able to nap for 30 minutes in your arms. Those things are not sustainable for many families. And if your child needs extra support, it is okay that you're here looking for that support and trying to sort through all of the weeds that are out on the internet to see what is going to be the most supportive way for you to teach them how to learn these independent sleep skills. I am very honest with my families that in that gray area, we are going to see crying. It's just part of the process. When we see that our children are crying, no, it doesn't mean we have to ignore them completely. Our response with the sleep training method, such as time checks or the chair method, is a response. Not the same response that you've been offering, but it is a response. You can provide some level of soothing. You don't need to leave them completely alone. And it is okay to hold space for them while they are upset, but still know that you're making the right choice and you're empowered as a parent in choosing something that you know is good for them or better for them than your current sleep situation. Many families ask me about the long-term effects of crying, and they worry about topics such as, will my child feel abandoned? Will they still feel attached? Are they going to learn that I'm just not responding to them? And what all of the research tells us is that there are no long-term effects on crying. Why? Because crying is the way that our babies communicate primarily. And crying is so normal for toddler behavior. Really, I think up to teenage years, crying is pretty typical. So there is no direct correlation with crying and long-term negative effects. What studies tell us are that when we cry, our cortisol levels are increased, and they decrease about 15 to 20 minutes after our crying is done. Doesn't matter the reason. Our children don't differentiate between the reason why they're crying, right? Not like they have higher cortisol when it's sleep training and not as high cortisol when you're taking those scissors away. What we know is that over the long term, these spikes and reductions in cortisol do not have any negative long-term effects on brain development. However, what does have negative long-term effects on brain development is sleep deprivation. Interestingly enough, the effects of sleep deprivation, so not getting long consolidated hours of sleep beyond the ages of 4 to 6 months when it's typical to drop most night feeds, we see that children have an increased risk of diagnosis for ADHD. They typically have lower academic outcomes than their well-rested peers. They may have more negative behavior reports from schools, as well as the inability to self-regulate from an emotional standpoint. What scientists are theorizing from these studies, comparing groups of children who are not sleeping over the course of 5 years to children who do sleep and whose parents have sleep trained over the course of 5 years, is that this constant cortisol elevation that occurs when we are sleep deprived does have a negative long-term effect on brain development. That's a lot of technical information I'm throwing at you, so it's really important for me to recap. When we are crying, increase in cortisol. When we are sleep deprived, increase in cortisol. 15 minutes after we stop crying, cortisol goes back down to baseline. If we don't sleep, and if we're constantly up, and this happens for weeks, months, and years at a time, our body is never given a chance to repair that cortisol. If we are constantly in a light stage of sleep and not able to transition sleep cycles, we won't get into the deep non-REM sleep, which is the phase that repairs that cortisol. This is what the scientists are theorizing does have the negative long-term effect on the brain. It's really important to understand that these are just correlations. They are not causation. So when we have studies that are so long-term, right? So these are studies that are done over the course of 4 or 5 years. There's no way to say that a group of kids who aren't sleep trained will eventually have lower academic outcomes, behavioral and emotional trouble, right? There is no cause between not sleep training and these effects. There's lots of other environmental and parental factors that go into the way that these children have developed and grown into the 5-year-olds that were studied over the course of this longitudinal study. Because so many families do not want to sleep train because of a short-term problem, they unknowingly are creating more long-term problems for their kids because there's misinformation, because there's a lot of fear-mongering on the internet, and because we can get sucked into an algorithm that makes us feel like terrible or bad parents if we're making the choice to prioritize healthy sleep. I could literally stand on this soapbox forever because I think it's so important to make you feel empowered and good about your decision to make sleep a thing in your household. So important. But I'm gonna get off the soapbox for a little bit just so I can help you get to the root of what this video was all about, which is how to manage it. The point of me explaining all of that is the first part of how to manage it. You're looking at it logically. Crying is an emotional thing. It creates an emotional response. Many of the times it's for moms. A lot of the times dads see the emotional response too. Usually there's one stronger parent and one parent who needs a little more support, but having the logic behind it can help you reason when you are walking through the process of sleep training and your child is inevitably crying. Let's talk about what you can do in the moment though to make the crying a little more bearable. The number one thing to do, the biggest piece of advice I have for you, is to be consistent with your sleep training program. Having a plan is so essential, and when we are consistent in teaching that plan, we will see that the crying reduces in length and intensity over the course of the first couple of nights. If you are having trouble implementing your plan, or you feel like the programs that are out there are not individualized, or that you have a really specific situation with your child, one being vomiting. So many children vomit as a result of crying, and that's the barrier for entry for their parents. This is what I work on with families one-on-one all the time. I'd love for you to go down below this video, click the link to book a call with me. I offer free 15-minute phone calls to assess your personal sleep situation and explain more about which sleep program would be right for your family. Another suggestion to help you through the crying when it's actually happening: get out of the house. If you're the parent who's the most sensitive and you have a partner who can help out, it is okay for you to leave. It's okay for you to go take a Target run, go grab a cup of coffee, to go for a walk until the first night is done. Maybe you do that for the first couple of nights. So many moms have seen so much more success when their partner steps up to the plate and takes on the majority of the sleep training in the first couple of nights themselves. Also, when we have the non-preferred parent doing the sleep training method, they don't protest as much, the children. The children just have a much better response because they are able to learn a little bit more quickly, and there's not as much of an emotional attachment at the time of sleep training. If that's a little too big of a step for you to leave the house and you really do want to be home to monitor the progress, what I suggest you do is get some loop earplugs or other type of noise canceling headphones in order to reduce the amount of volume that you're listening to. Turn the volume off on your monitor. I guarantee you're still going to hear your kid cry through the walls. I know that's a thing. You're hardwired to your kids. You know, how many times have you heard them in the middle of the night, like the tiniest peep they make, right? So we need to mute that a little bit. Doesn't mean we need to completely turn it off. We can still be listening, but if we reduce the intensity of the volume, that can be much better for our nervous system. Before you begin sleep training, make sure that you have tools in your toolbox for your own self-regulation. This looks so different for so many people. It can include something physical, like doing yoga, doing some deep breathing. Bilateral stimulation, which is activating different sides of your brain, actually activates in the calming of our nervous system. You might need something that isn't so physical, and maybe eating ice cream is what calms you down. Make sure your freezer is totally stocked. Have a plan to help you reduce the amount of stress that you may be experiencing during the first couple nights of sleep training. Be confident. I think that is one of the most important pieces of advice that I give to moms and dads. You're at this place because your current sleep situation is not sustainable, and be confident in your choices, that you're smart and that you have your child's well-being paramount. That is the number one priority. When you exude confidence, your child is going to receive that energy and the whole process will be much smoother. Tell me what you are planning to do during your sleep training to help make the crying a little more bearable. Head down to the comments and leave a question. Be sure to like this video. When you like the video, it just brings it up into the algorithm in order to present it to more parents. And we all know that it takes a village to raise our kids. So you doing these simple things will definitely help another family get the sleep that they need. I have a playlist that's gonna pop up about sleep training methods. So if you're looking into different sleep training methods that feel comfortable for you and you're in the beginning of your research, I definitely suggest checking out all of the resources. And be sure to hit subscribe and turn on your notifications for the Your Zen Baby Sleep channel. Why? You'll be the first to be notified when I publish my weekly sleep content. I love helping your family get their sleep on track. I'm so passionate about it, and I'm so happy that you found me. As always, from my living room to yours, thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time.